Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our monthly SIH Masterclass series. I think it's time to start. The topic today is data storytelling. We come together over Zoom today, all whilst our feet are firmly planted on the beautiful Aboriginal land that unites us, with thanks to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, past and present. My name is Georgia. I'm a data science trainer at the Sydney Informatics Hub. We are recording the session today. The presentation will be about 45 minutes long, and then there will be time for questions at the end. There are other people from SIH joining us today, so if you have any question during the presentation, please use the Zoom chat. If this is your first training with us, I'll give you a very quick overview. There's someone that needs to mute the microphone, I think. Let me give you a quick overview of who we are and what we do. So at SIH, we are a core research facility supporting computational and data-driven research across every discipline through a range of services and activities we offer. We can provide you with access to research infrastructure, such as high-performance computing and storage. We provide various types of consultations. It can be one-on-one, it can be group consultations, it can be a short one-hour session, or we can also provide long-term support for projects, analysis and software development for data-driven research. We can help with your grant application, and we build data communities with events such as Aki Hours, where we meet on the third Wednesday of every month to give you research support. And we offer training in different formats. You can have a look at all the different training we offer in our training calendar. Our masterclasses take place on the fourth Thursday of each month and are 45 to 60 minutes long webinars with the aim to make data-related topics accessible to everyone, regardless of any technical background. Working with data is not just for experts, and we'd like to help you understanding what are the necessary skills for being successful in your research. So for the training today, we are going to have a look at different data storytelling techniques and how you can use them to convey the story of your research. And then we're going to have a look at different tools that are available out there that you can use to visualize your data. And let's start with talking about data. What you see here is the 10th annual Data Never Sleeps infographics from Domo, which is a cloud-based platform where you can create dynamic visualizations, collaborate with stakeholders, and transform data with simple user-friendly tools. This was originally created for large enterprises and small businesses, and every year they release an infographic like this to see the expansion of digital life now that we can do just about everything online. The infographic here reports data produced every minute of the day. And what we can get from this is that it's a general understanding that while the world has faced a pandemic and economic ups and downs, there has been one constant in society, which is our increasing use of digital tools to support our personal and business needs, from digital engagement through social media, streaming content, online purchasing, and peer-to-peer payments. The bar plots down there show what happened in a 10 years time frame. You can see we have 500 hours of content uploaded every minute of every day on YouTube, 60,000 photos shared on Instagram, and 1.7 million of content is posted on Facebook. So why is data storytelling so important? It seems that many of the heavily recruited professionals with advanced degrees in economics, mathematics, or statistics actually struggle with communicating their insights to others effectively. So essentially telling the story of their numbers. The phrase data storytelling has been associated with many things: data visualization, infographics, dashboards, data presentations, and so on. Too often, data storytelling is interpreted as just visualizing data effectively. However, it is much more than just creating visually appealing data charts. Data storytelling is a structured approach for communicating data insights, and it involves a combination of three key elements: data, visuals, and narrative. You can see here in the intersection of these three circles that those three components together drive change. And this is important because change is a byproduct of progress. If you want to advance, if you want to improve, you must pursue new insights and implement new ideas that inevitably introduce change. Now, your data provides the clarity and specificity that's needed to drive positive change. And your data may hold tremendous amount of potential value, but if your data isn't understood and isn't compelling, no one will act on it and no change will occur. But let's have a look at how data, visuals, and narrative interact with each other. Data and narrative. So when narrative is coupled with data, it helps to explain to your audience what's happening in the data and why a particular insight is important. Ample context and commentary are often needed to fully appreciate your data. When visuals are applied to data, they can enlighten the audience to insight that they wouldn't see without charts or graphs. In fact, many interesting patterns and outliers in the data would remain hidden in the rows and columns of data tables without the help of visualizations. And finally, when narrative and visuals are merged together, they can engage or even entertain an audience. And it's no surprise we love to watch movies to immerse ourselves in different lives, worlds, and adventures. So it is when we combine the right visuals and narrative with the right data that we have a data story that can influence and drive change. For some people, crafting a story around the data may seem like an unnecessary or time-consuming effort. They may feel the insights or facts should be sufficient to stand on their own as long as they're reported in a clear manner, or they may believe the revealed insights alone should influence the right decision and drive their audience to act. Now, unfortunately, this point of view is based on the assumption that business decisions are based solely on logic and reason. However, you won't always need to tell a story. So let's say you have a big or valuable insight to share. There's a good chance it's going to require a data story in order for it to be properly understood and accepted. In fact, between the insight's potential impact and what type of insight it is, so hard versus easy, there's a sweet spot that it's called the story zone, where data storytelling excels. This spot spans an area where the insight is medium to high in value and falls into the hard category because it's either unpleasant, disruptive, unexpected, complex, risky, costly, counterintuitive. So in that case, you will need to think beyond the line or bar graphs. But let me try and give you an example. So this is a very basic version of an Excel spreadsheet. I have one column with a list of professions and one column with counts. I know how this data have been collected and why, but by showing you data like in this way, I'm actually doing nothing to package it up for you. So by only considering my data, I am assuming that because the raw information speaks to me, it will speak equally well to you. But I'm pretty sure you don't have any idea of what this data is about. So what I can do to help you better understand my insight is visualize my data. Data can be displayed in lots of different ways. In this example, we are using a bar plot. We have the professions on the x-axis, the counts on the y-axis, but still this doesn't really help in sending you a message. So maybe I can improve my visualization. Maybe I can order the x-axis. Now it's easier to see what we have a lot of registered nurses, for example, and much less nurse practitioners. But we still don't really have a context for this. So I can keep playing with visuals. I can start even playing with words. I can add a headline. Headlines help in better understanding your visuals, and I can now communicate to you what this data set is about. The healthcare professional volunteers that have helped New York hospitals fight the coronavirus pandemic. And maybe I want to add something more. Maybe I want to show you the total number of volunteers. So I can add what we call a call out. And we can now see that a total of 76,000 professionals have helped in fighting the pandemic. And let's say I want to highlight something that I think it's important. So I add a highlight to show that there, after the registered nurses, the mental health professionals represent the majority of those who volunteered to provide support to New Yorkers. And we can keep playing with it. We can play a lot with visualization, and we can add as many data decorations and graphical eye candy as we want. What would happen though is that we would only jump ahead to visualizing data for the audience without crafting a clear narrative. So by simply sharing the data charts, we hope someone consuming the data will somehow find something meaningful. However, rather than adding value, data decorations can often just end up adding unwanted noise. So let's see what happens when we actually include a narrative to our data and we tell a story. Now, we can all remember how much COVID-19 overwhelmed hospitals and medical staff everywhere in the world. For our data set, we have collected the numbers for retired doctors and healthcare professionals across the US that have been called to come out of retirement or non-hospital jobs to assist in the effort to treat COVID-19 patients in New York. 76,000 answered the call and traveled to help the state fight the pandemic. And you might have seen this in the news, New Yorkers demonstrating their appreciation for healthcare workers by coming to their windows in New York City and cheering together in a social media coordinating campaign. So this is why you want to tell a story. You want to evoke an emotional response. It's the same that happens when you see a great play, you watch a movie, or you read a book that you like. You have experienced the magic of a story. A good story grabs your attention and evokes an emotional response. And after finishing the story, a day, a week, or even a month later, you could easily describe it to a friend. People hear statistics, but they feel story. This is something that I found Googling on data storytelling, and I'm sure you will find it as well if you start Googling about it. So how do you start telling your story? Have you ever received the question, what's the point, from your audience, or similar questions such as, what's the story here, or what's the message? This happens when we don't make our point clear and succinct when we communicate our findings. Your audience should never have to guess what message you want them to know. And there is a communication structure that is called the what, so, what, now, what, that is used a lot in business, and that can be used to connect complex data analytics with the audience. The what is the first step. It states the facts. So inform the audience what's going on without much value judgment. In news writing, for example, this is the first paragraph for what's going on. And you want to answer the question, what happened, or what do the data tell us? What's the surprise in the data, and what did you discover? So by telling only the facts, your audience is already thinking ahead for the reason. You're allowing them to think ahead and be curious on what you're gonna tell them. The so what states the relevance of the background information. Why is this worth your audience time? Why should they even listen? What's your judgment, and what has happened because of the facts? The now what turns your insights into go forward actions. It's here where you make recommendations based on your data analytics, and you want to answer the questions, what do we need to do to move forward? What have we learned? How we use this insight that we discovered? What hidden opportunities has this event uncovered, and how can we use them for our benefit? The what, so what, now what is only one of the many communication models that are implemented by businesses. Some other models are called problem, solution, benefit, or past, present, future. They're all more or less the same. And we have this data storytelling arc that fits very well with any of these models. Within the storytelling arc, you start with explaining your current situation, what's called the hook. And then you provide supporting details that eventually reveal your major finding. And then you provide your audience with your recommendations. Now, independently of which communication model we pick, our communication needs to be tailored to our specific audience. Different audiences will need different things. So let's say we are scientists, right? And we go to a conference, we want to present a new research project. So a common fault in the communication of our research story is usually talking only to those who, like us, love science, and we think we have reached a wider audience. Instead, what we usually do is that we consider only those that love everything related to science. We call this the fans. But we might fail in getting the attention of different types of audiences. And I've reported here some examples. So we have the people in the middle who have some interest in science, those who say, I don't get it. So these are people that are interested in science but have trouble understanding it. Then we have those who don't have time to pay attention. They're too busy. Maybe you see them working at their laptop during your presentation. And then you have the distrustful people who don't trust science and often hold anti-scientific beliefs. And the I know it already. So these are those who feel they have nothing new to learn from science and often have extreme anti-scientific beliefs. So facts and evidence rarely help as much as we think. New information, especially, hardly ever changes a mind that's already been made up. So you can't rely on data. Rather, you need to find out what your audience's values are and discuss those instead, or even better, frame your discussion to align with their views. So this doesn't mean that you have to change your view, but for instance, if you're talking to someone who's against infant vaccination, you could establish the common ground that you both care greatly about the welfare of children. Or if you are speaking to somebody who doesn't trust science or scientists, you could look for areas of commonality in being a parent or a gardener or whatever that person values. So essentially tell a good story. It's actually neuroscience that tells us that stories increase people's likelihood of remembering information, reduce counter arguments, and are more compelling than facts and more convincing than data. Most effective science communication really comes down to just telling a good story. Knowing your audience and your communication objective is crucial, but if you can turn your message into a story, it has a much better chance of being accepted. So let me give you an example on how we can adapt our communication style. So this is the title of a paper published on Nature. It reads, systematic review and meta-analysis investigating moderators of long-term effects of exercise on cognition in healthy individuals. So how effective is this title in telling us what this paper is about? I mean, not very, especially if you are not an expert of the field. But let's see what happens when we adapt our communication style to reach a wider audience. So the same paper now reads, exercise has positive long-term effects on cognitive function. Coordination exercises, such as dancing, appear to have a greater benefit than endurance exercises or resistance training. Now, this is much more understandable to anyone that doesn't have a direct experience with that specific field of research. And these two titles are exactly the same thing. The second one, I got it from the website Useful Science. The reference is here on the slide, and this is a great place if you're looking for finding the main impact of scientific research in a language that is understandable for everybody. So great for presentations. And while we adapt our communication style, there are some biases that we need to be aware of. The most important one, I think, is the framing effect. So the framing effect is when our decisions are influenced by the way information is presented. Equivalent information can be more or less attractive depending on what features are highlighted. This essentially means that our choices are influenced by the way options are framed through different wordings, reference points, and emphasis. The most common framing draws attention to either the positive gain or negative loss associated with an option. And we are susceptible to this sort of framing because we tend to avoid loss. So here in this table is an example on how different phrasing affected participants' responses to a choice in a hypothetical life and death situation. So there were participants that were asked to choose between two treatments, treatment A and treatment B, for 600 people affected by a deadly disease. Treatment A was predicted to result in 400 deaths, whereas treatment B had a 33% chance that no one would die, but a 66% chance that everyone would die. Now, this choice was then presented to participants either with positive framing, so how many people would live, or with negative framing, how many people would die. And treatment A was chosen by 80% of participants when it was presented with positive framing. So you pick treatment A, you save 200 lives. And this percentage dropped to 20% when the same choice was presented with negative framing. So you pick treatment A and 400 people will die. Understanding that people are influenced by framing can make us focus on how we present information we want others to accept and act on. The other bias that I think is worth mentioning is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is our tendency to choose information that will corroborate with our already established lines of thinking. You know, we are quite convinced that we are rational individuals who make a point to thoughtfully consider all information available to us. Well, this is often not the case. We all have our own system of beliefs to take into account, and we may allow our subjectivity to play a role in our interpretation. And it's not hard to imagine how this would influence the process of insight extraction from data. For example, we might prioritize the findings that confirm an initial hypothesis while disregarding observation that contradict it. And this happens especially if the data is ambiguous or vague. Confirmation bias would motivate us to distort the data to fit the narrative that we are trying to push. And it really takes a conscious effort to constantly challenge one's own beliefs and understand that distortions might be created during that analysis. And this is why collaboration is so important. Different backgrounds, different point of views, and to be fair, being able to understand how different subjectivities interplay with your data set might make the analysis even more robust. So it is clear that data is becoming more and more critical to our success. So why do we still struggle to listen to it on a regular basis? What I'm reporting here is the example of the pioneer of antiseptic procedure, Dr. Semmelweis. In 1846, Semmelweis introduced a hand washing policy to reduce the mortality rates of a disease that is known as childbed fever. Semmelweis couldn't scientifically prove why his hand washing policy worked, dropping mortality rates by 82%. But what happened at the time is that the medical community was resistant in accepting this valuable discovery, and Semmelweis actually had to face sharp criticisms. And that's because Semmelweis' medical peers couldn't accept that they were the primary cause of the childbed fever deaths, and that women's lives could be saved simply through better hygiene. So Semmelweis watched this theory be openly attacked in medical lecture halls and medical publications throughout Europe. He wrote increasingly angry letters to prominent European obstetricians denouncing them as irresponsible murderers. And the rejection of his life-saving insight affected him so greatly that he eventually had some kind of mental breakdown, and he was committed to a mental institution and died there a few weeks later. So this example is for telling you that sometimes the story you have to tell isn't the story people want to hear, but this doesn't mean your research isn't important. And there are several things we can learn from Semmelweis' story, and these are mainly things we have already discussed during this presentation. The first one is timeliness and clarity. So if you possess data that are critical to your business or organization success, you have a duty to communicate them clearly and in a timely manner. Semmelweis waited too long and allowed others to cloud his message. Second lesson is audience and the curse of knowledge. So the curse of knowledge is the tendency to assume other people have the necessary context or knowledge to follow what you're communicating. Semmelweis' audience, his medical peers at the time, were not used to being criticized. And instead of concept sharing and patience, Semmelweis went on the attack and threw insults at his critics. So know your audience and strive to understand their existing attitudes and beliefs. Not everyone is going to accept your data, especially if it is disruptive to commonly held practices or beliefs. But instead, you may want to focus on identifying open-minded allies who can help build internal support and consensus for your ideas. Third lesson, narrative evokes emotion. So interesting statistic alone won't persuade skeptical minds. So don't rely on just logic and reason to make your point. Semmelweis was a data-driven doctor who missed a great opportunity to weigh his facts into a compelling data story that connected with his audience on an emotional level. And last lesson is the power of data visualization. Well-designed charts can make insights come to life that would otherwise lie dormant and hidden in the rows and columns of the tables. It is true Semmelweis didn't have access to visualization tools like we do today. But since we do, I thought I'd share with you a couple of websites that I think are great starting points for data visualization. First one is the DataViz project. So if you go on the website, you'll see a lot of different kind of visualizations, charts, bar plots. You can click on any of these and you will get a description. But if you go on the top and you click on input, you have a long list of example of data sets. So if you go there and you have a look at which of these one resembles the data set that you have, you click on it. Let's say we pick this one column with event and one column with time. And this website gives you an example of which kind of data chart you can create with your specific data set. So this website I think is great, but there is another one. This one, Data2Viz. It works more or less in the same way. You have to pick which kind of data set you have. If it's either numeric or categorical variable, network, time series. Let's say you have network and go down and you pick the visualization you want to do. Let's say you want to do a heat map. And even here you get a description of what a heat map is, and you also get the corresponding code in your preferred programming language. So let's say you want to do a heat map in Python. You click on it, and again, you have a description, a quick start with a quick chunk of code that you can use, and then it gives you option to personalize the heat map. So have a look at these two. I think they're great. One last thing I wanted to share with you before wrapping up is on data visualization. So many times we think about aesthetics before thinking about structure and about the information itself and about the story the graphic should tell. So after you've determined you have the right data visualization, you need to calibrate your visuals to the message you want to convey. And this means that picking the right visual is usually not enough. But for example, someone is presenting to you bar plots with data on how people's device preferences for accessing digital content had been shifting from desktop to smartphones and tablets over the last 3 years. So the presenter chose to focus on only the yearly changes for the different device types. And although this kind of visualization is appropriate for the data set, it's really hard to understand what the trend for each device type. But if you switch it to something like this instead, where you can actually see the changes by device type across the 3-year time point, then you can fully appreciate the message. And doing the math for your audience actually does also help a lot. So I have included references in each slide for what we discussed today. And if you want to give it a go at data visualization and you're stuck, you can contact to us. So we have our Aki Hour team that meets the 3rd Wednesday of each month, and we can help you with any sort of question data related. If you want to follow our channels, you will find training sessions, material, and recordings available for you, or you can contact us on our training email. The slides from today and the recording of the session are going to be available for you. You will get an email in the next day or so. And in addition to the references that I showed you in the presentation here, you will find additional links in the very last slide if you want to go dig deeper into data storytelling. And we have a QR code here. If you can please give us a feedback for this training session, we would really appreciate it. And I'm here if you have any questions.
So, Georgia, there was a question about the websites, if they are free to use or the pricing.
Our website?
Those 2 websites.
Yeah, they're free. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you guys for coming over today to our training session. And if you want to come along for our next masterclass next month in August, all the details are in the training calendar. It will be about setting up your personal blog portfolio. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Georgia. Bye.
Thank you.